Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason Stenek, 2020.com, running for president. And in his spare time, he is engineering USA Prepares right here at Genesis Communications Network. Rich Scheben's with us, and he's live in Montana. Rich, thanks for taking care of USA Prepares yesterday. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Vince. Dr. Shealy is such an American treasure. In his knowledge, he hasn't skipped a beat. He hasn't lost a notch in his belt. He is just as sharp as ever. It's amazing how he can answer questions so succinctly with so little words.
You know, I've seen Norm Shealy at when I first started broadcasting. He and I were at the same radio station in Springfield, the one that threw him overboard and me overboard. And it's actually kind of interesting how we have a track record of getting thrown overboard, separately together. And, from the meetups and from the radio station in Springfield. But he would literally go into the studio for his broadcast, his 1 hour broadcast weekly, with a yellow legal pad or a white legal pad. And there was nothing on there except some hash marks. And there were 31 numbers in a column, 1, 2, 3, 4, going down the side of the page. And that would be the day. So on the 5th day of the month, he would just have hash marks for how many calls he took. And that's all, no notes whatsoever. He just wanted to keep track of how many calls he got. And he would easily get 20 plus calls per hour, which, there are networks who do nothing but take calls, and they can't do 21 calls per hour. He, no notes. I mean, literally, he's sitting there without anything other than a pen or a pencil and a legal pad that he just keeps track of, calls.
It's funny you mentioned that.
It's absolutely
yesterday.
No.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done, Vince. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
It's funny that you mentioned that as far as calls or questions in a certain unit of measure of time, because I had all these questions prepared for him, and I don't know if you listened to it on the loop around later in the day when you were free, but I just kept bombarding him with questions because I had all these questions prepared. We were getting towards the end of the show, and I told him, I said, Dr. Shealy, I apologize for all these questions because if I have more than 10 seconds of airtime, Vince Finelli will punish me and make me sing 1970s disco songs. And he laughed. He just laughed.
Well, I did not. Yesterday. Too. Oh, absolutely. And he's sharp as a tack, no question about it. Yesterday, I didn't use the computer. I didn't use any communications devices, and it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But I had a list of questions that had it been on, I would have asked him. But what I normally do for a broadcast, for example, with Norm Shealy, is during the week, I have a spiral-bound notebook, and if I think of something that would be germane to the class, I'll just go write it down and go into the studio, write down on that particular notebook. So I had more than a page of questions, and that's how it works. And Norm Shealy and I do not talk or communicate before the broadcast. So, for example, you and I talk about things that, that are topical And we talk about things that are newsworthy and, before the broadcast, the day or two or three or, even, the just one day before, we'll talk about what's happening. And that does not happen with Norm. Norm is he's just ready to go, no preparation whatsoever. It's all in his head. Literally. Absolutely. So
well, he has 64 years of practical experience. Just think of all the people, because of the propaganda, the hoaxes, the lies, that people are trying to control the narrative with dis and misinformation, or have megaphones and microphones today. But yet, Dr. Scheele is not giving us 64 years of theory. He's given us 64 years of practical experience. And that is invaluable today with the system gone rogue and trust being pretty much totally eliminated.
Rich Scheben, I've asked him a couple times over the years. He and I have been broadcasting about 10 years. He was the first full-time instructor, if you will, at USA Prepares. And it's because I met him in the studio at the radio station in Springfield. And I once asked him about medicine. So, for example, when a patient came in, did he watch the patient from his exam room, for example, walk down the hallway into his exam room? Now, today, it's not done like that. I'm not talking about Norm Scheele. I'm talking about if you go to a clinic, you're already seated, the nurse is taking your, vitals, and the doctor sees you when you're sitting down at rest. Okay? That's not the way it is with Dr. Scheele. Dr. Scheele watches you from, walk down the hall, and your gait, your posture, the movement of your arms, the tilt of your head maybe, all of those things go into a diagnosis before you even sit down for your examination. And that's the way it used to be, and that's the way it is with Dr. Norm Scheele. And sometimes he'll sit across the desk from you, depending on the situation, and he'll hold your hand. And you'll think that, he's just being friendly. He is being friendly, but he's also feeling the temperature, your pulse, and all that. And you don't even know it. That's Dr. Norm Scheele. How about that?
Well, the fact that he's willing to give out free information on medical care and to make your livelihood better, make your health, your family health better, to give you information free of charge is unheard of. Because I want you to think, folks, when you go into a doctor's office the last 20 years, you ever notice how the doctors, the physicians, the diagnosticians, whether it be NPs or PAs, doesn't matter, they don't give out voluntary information. They wait for you to ask questions because they want you coming back. It's like forced obsolescence with products and manufacturing today. That's how they do it. That's something that you have to really think about hard. So when you have somebody who's a practicing physician and has that many years of experience, old school experience, which means that they're willing to say the truth, and they know certain remedies that would work. And he made a lot of profound statements yesterday with the questions I asked him. And then we were talking about acute and chronic illnesses. And I'll paraphrase what he said to make it short and sweet. He basically said if you have an acute situation or illness, or however it's categorized, and you're taking pharmaceutical drugs beyond, which is all synthetic, and we talked in detail about that. If you're taking these drugs for more than 6 months, and then now you're chronic, he says the drugs will not only have less efficacy and safety, but could very well kill you with your chronic illness with the medication and therapy that's out there today. Now, I want you to wrap your head around that, folks. And I commented after the break, because we had a break coming in when he said that, and I asked, if you have diabetes and insulin, and he says he doesn't consider insulin a drug, and that's a different situation. So there are different situations out there. I mean, if you've had heart surgery and you're taking an anticoagulant, and you absolutely need that, to survive. I mean, there may be some exceptions to the rule, but he said basically almost without an exception, except for drugs like insulin, it's going to do you more harm than good. To me, that was an extremely profound, intelligent, well thought out answer, and he said it in a lot fewer words than I did, and I repeated it in layperson terminology to get his comment on my accuracy, and he said I was right on. So I think we all need to think about, that's why Vince and I talk about moving to the country, growing your own fruit and vegetables or produce. Dr. Shealy says he doesn't even like to buy things from the store because it's so contaminated. And just because something says it's organic, it doesn't mean it's organic. You don't even have to prove it today. So being self-sufficient and doing what we do in our lifestyle and on the show and practicing what we preach is really important, because we're in an era that there's no consequences for the illegal action of the people at the top. Vince?
You know, you and I have a friend in common. His name is Stuart. And Stuart lives near us here in Missouri. And I get a chance to see Stuart, not as often as I'd like, but he's a wonderful man. And we raised well, he came out to your place. We raise chickens and we have some eggs. And he said something really, really profound. And so we have extra eggs, and we like to give them to people whom we like. And these are brown eggs. These are those free-range chicken eggs that so sought after. And so I said to him, Stuart, these they may be fertilized. And he said, well, that's okay. They won't mind if I eat them soon enough. They won't mind. And what he meant was, those eggs could become chicks. So if you eat them soon enough, they won't mind. It's just he's a brilliant, the things he says he says them succinctly, kind of like Norm, just brilliant. And so there's a lot of wisdom that some people have, and boy, we should capitalize on it and record it, so that it stays around for, hundreds and hundreds of years. So you're right on the money with Dr. Shealy. He is a real gem, and I'm so fortunate to be able to call him my friend, and so are you. And so here we are. Someday. Oh, well, okay. Put your sneakers on, because he moves really fast. I was at a convention out of state many, many years ago. And I saw this guy, going down the main lobby, and it was huge. And he was moving really fast. And I recognized him out of the corner of my eye. I didn't know he was going. And it was Dr. Norm Shealy, just zooming from one seminar to the next. And, so at 90 years old, he moves very, very quickly. And if we could all be in that state of health at 90, boy, we'd be doing great. So we come back. We're going to talk about the economy. We're going to talk about the race, the contest, the circus. Rich Even's with us. Rich, where are we going next?
What I'd like to do today, Vince, is I don't know if you heard me before the break answer your question, but the music came on. I want to talk about the lack of trust in the system. And there are certain subject matters that have transpired over the last few days that absolutely need to be discussed, because the mainstream media is not discussing it, because they're either bought and paid for, or they're blackmailed, or they're part of certain pedophile rings or something, that they have signed on to the Nazi regime of being authoritarian, tyrannical, dictatorship, totalitarian, and fascism. And it's up to us to act like citizens who expect the government to work for us, not the other way around, while they're giving breaks to the too big, corrupt, overspending, incorporated, elite control, manipulative, anti-constitutional government. And we are allowing the big corporations to privatize and capitalize their gains and socialize their losses through cost-shifting, taxes, and inflation to us, the little people. So the fascism, the cronyism, the feudalism, the corporate welfare all rolled into one, bailouts, stock buyouts, zombie companies, as the little people continue to mount delinquencies, defaults, bankruptcies, homelessness, and evictions, which will be, through certain moratoriums expiring, get worse. So I think there's a lot of topics that need to be discussed here, and I want to have conversations about this today. And I'm going to start with this proof of Hunter Biden raping and torturing children for the Chinese blackmail scheme. Bombshell report. Now, I think anybody who does any reading, any research, anybody who has a pulse in America or the free world knows about this today and knows that it's true, knows that the lawyer contacted Giuliani and asked for the hard drive back. Apparently, there's multiple computers now. And I want to talk about these articles, and my disclaimer, as usual, folks, all these articles are published in the public domain. Now, when you hear me talk about adult mutual consensual sex, I've had some people on the left say, well, mutual and consensual means the same thing. They have a correlation, they have a relationship, but that's it. Mutual basically means a similar relationship towards one another, that they share certain things in common. Consensual is defined as formed through mutual consent. So there is overlap, but to be more specific, consensual means to be of one mind, voluntary allowance, acceptance, approval, permission. So when you see pedophilia running wild, when you see prepubescent girls on film being tortured, and you see the FBI, the DOJ doing nothing, that's when you know America is fallen. And Donald Trump and the Patriots and the mainstream media is trying to put a trampoline on the bottom so at least the fall may not kill us. Next article. Biden did meet with Son's Ukraine partnership. The terms never spoken has been exposed as a lie when this laptop went to the Delaware shop, which led to the FBI discovery, which has now proven the FBI held this information for months and did not disclose it. This is beyond disgusting. Next article. Feds had evidence of Joe Biden's Burisma meeting before impeachment. Next article. Biden donor group sends 225,000 ballot requests, including for dead citizens. Does anybody really believe this election is going to be valid? Democrats appoint convicted felon to handle mail-in ballots. Hollywood celebrities are urging people to vote early and in person. Double dip. This mail-in ballots, it should be invalid.
Rich Scheben's with us, and he's been talking about corruption at the highest levels of our government. Rich, please continue.
Well, thank you, Vince. Again, as I always try to remember, I appreciate you letting me exercise my First Amendment right that millions of American soldiers, combat soldiers, died for our freedoms and liberties. Now, before the break, I was talking about some of the corruption with voter fraud, election fraud, and as most of this audience probably is aware, John Roberts basically is always siding with the liberal Democrats on the Supreme Court of the United States, and he just gave the green light for Pennsylvania to extend their mail-in ballots, which is basically cheat-in ballots. So for you in Pennsylvania who may be listening, John Roberts in the Supreme Court says your vote is irrelevant. Welcome to Pennsylvania. Next article. Email leaker says FBI covered up the disclosure of Hunter Biden's computer and all this information. And it's unbelievable. I'm going to talk a little bit about that when I'm done with some of these articles. Next article. Bidens got rich while Americans got robbed. That's a quote from President Trump, and boy, is that accurate. Folks, we're in this voter and election fraud is so bad. The Democrats say it's un-American when they did the census count to count how many non-Americans are in America. They said that Russians are always influencing our election. But all illegals from any country voting is okay, and we shouldn't have voter ID laws because it's racist. They say that illegals don't need an ID, but citizens need one for just about everything we do in commerce or life. Joe Biden got caught with Ukraine. He can use $1 billion of U.S. taxpayer dollars. Remember that when he said, "Oh, well, son of a beep, I got the prosecutor fired." Remember that? He can use $1 billion of your money to stop investigations for his own son. But it's an impeachable offense if Donald Trump inquires about it. While at the same time, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton is spying and running a coup and shadow him around the world, committing treason and sedition. You just can't even make this stuff up. This is a bad movie script. Next article. Joe Biden, and he may have said this because he knew his son's computer was going to be disclosed to the American people. But here's Joe Biden's quote. He says, and I know some of you may not believe it, but this is a published article in the public domain. He says he supports 8-year-olds changing gender, and he'll flat out change the law. So for those of you who have toddlers and little children in your house, for those of you who are adults now and will sit back and say nothing because it didn't happen to you, do you want to live with that? Next article. If Biden wins, the election is null and void because of Facebook, Twitter, and Google and YouTube election interference. Everybody agrees with that. Next article. Full story behind Hunter Biden's laptop debunks latest Russia conspiracy theory. See what they're doing, and the same thing with Adam Schiff. He's basically saying that, this is all coming from the Kremlin. It's all a bunch of BS. This just shows how corrupt they are and how stupid they think we are. And that's why they keep calling us useful idiots. It's time we put a stop to that, folks. And Giuliani had a meeting with Lou Dobbs. And the FBI told the computer guy, that tech guy, if you keep your mouth shut, nothing will happen to you. And I want to talk a little bit about that after I'm done with these articles. Trump campaign statement. Joe Biden, a candidate for president of the United States, appears to be compromised by the Chinese. Biden laptop proves our government is compromised. Hunter Biden's hard drive reveal evidence of corruption, debauchery, and treachery. Does anybody want to say sedition, treason, and espionage? What the heck's going on here? FBI informant was one of the most active leaders pushing this Whitmer kidnapping plot. Our intelligence agencies are bought and paid for. They're totally compromised, folks. Biden campaign funneled $150,000 to his family members. Black Trumper, who had his teeth knocked out by Antifa, is now banned by social media companies. I know this is hard to believe. I'm going through them quick. Amy Barrett, responds to cruel Democrats who attack my family. Well, Judge Amy, no one disagrees with that, but thank God you weren't a white male heterosexual, because, as Brett Kavanaugh knows, you will be considered a gang rapist for the rest of your life. Not just raping women. You're raping women with other men. That's right. Billionaires' combined wealth has reached $10.2 trillion thanks to COVID-19. And the big tech people are 80% of the top 10 on that list. Are you connecting the dots, folks? But it's all about, controversial, racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, conspiracy theorist, intolerant, violent, hater, anti-Islamist phobe, anti-Islamist phobe, anti-Islamist phobe. No, folks, this is code for covering up crimes and dividing us at the same time. Oh, look at this. Young girl physically beating for supporting Trump at Women's March. Well, it's about blacks. It's about Latinos. It's about females. It's about transgenders. It's about this and that and the other. No, it's not. It's about consolidating money, power, and control at the highest levels and hiding corruption and crimes. Oh, but don't worry. AG Barr and Durham's they're gonna save the day and disclose and declassify all this. They've declassified 1% that needs to be declassified. Well, look, they just announced that the DOJ is going to file a landmark antitrust case against Google. That's called smokescreen, folks. They're going to slap them with a little fine on the wrist, and nothing's going to happen. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, really? Oh, well, look at this article. The DOJ probed into the Obama White House spying, and it ends up with no charges. See, rule of law is being exchanged with precedents, folks. When you demand to lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job based on what group you're in, and you feel entitled to play the victim group status card, you doubt your own value, you create economic black holes, anything goes. And then the same people demand no protection, rights, or restitution under the rule of law for the people who are targeted. You create basically a no-check scenario on runaway power. And then you enable and protect the most corrupt companies and industries in the country and the world, and then you give them liability immunity, which creates more wealth inequality. They want you, this is why they call you useful idiots, because you keep trying to protect your group, your hyphen, and your pronoun. We need to start protecting the bottom 93%. We need to start being American, or else we're going to create so many precedents and give so much free lunch to the elite, and they're going to continue doing divide and conquer strategies with all this political correctness and deception. And basically, the rule of law will be eliminated because the people will either be sold to the highest bidder or they will be blackmailed. We need to call out the hypocrisies and double standards. You're being played. You're being used. You're being duped. You're being conned. And what could possibly happen? Well, world leaders are planning new lockdowns to introduce the World Debt Reset Program, which includes vaccination requirements. What could possibly go wrong by the people, the same people who are demanding depopulation? What could possibly go wrong? So when I look at these articles that I just mentioned, folks, what's the bottom line here? Well, you have election rigging with Facebook, Twitter, Google, censoring Biden's pay-to-play, the scandals, blocking pretty much all Republicans, including President Trump. That's why this new format of this debate is going to be basically censored, canned, so Joe Biden keeps getting softball questions, and President Trump cannot respond with the new mute button that occurred. But the same people, the DOJ and the FBI, are still allowing child porn. They're still allowing Chinese government sites and Chinese propaganda. But no, we won't get these questions from town hall meetings because the mainstream media has given in to the Joe Biden corrupt dealings with America's geopolitical meetings. I want you to remember some of these articles that I've mentioned today and over the weeks and past months. Everything that the Democrats did, they tried to impeach President Trump for. What the Bidens did, what Hillary Clinton and Obama did, starting coups, multiple coups, blocking airwaves for what Hillary Clinton did for the emails and the making up of the Russian hoax and paying for it with her and the DNC. And the FBI and the DOJ and the CIA helped them. While Joe Biden, as per the emails, takes a 50% cut of all the dark money profits. While Hunter Biden can do pedophilia and, as per these articles and videos, apparently beat the crap out of young girls. But it's about the women. It's about the women. It's about the blacks, the Latinos. It's about the homosexuals and the transgenders. It's about all these different religions. No, it's not. It's a vehicle of tyranny to keep us divided and dumbed down and distracted. So you have phony Russiagate, where Hillary walks and General Flynn is still not released. You have treason against our own country with the FBI and CIA involved in the Whitmer kidnapping fiasco, Gina Haspel blocking the release of more declassifications, head of the CIA. You see, folks, this is what we have. We have, when you disclose truth, it's now a threat to the corrupt states. It proves that democracy is dead and a tyrannical, totalitarian, communist regime is upon us. Trust in the system is gone. Totally. 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 We'll be right back.
Scheben, I believe you said that we have, that the trust in the system is gone. And that leads me to recapitulate what I believe you said. So we have a crisis of confidence in education. We have a crisis of confidence in the monetary system, the banking system, the election system, science, history, email systems, food systems, the tax system, the social media, the police. We have a crisis of confidence in fairness for everyone. We have a crisis in confidence of the judicial system. We have a crisis in confidence of everything you can think of right now. And never in my life have I seen this like this. You know, there were crises of confidence here and there, but now it is pervasive. It is ubiquitous. It is 360 degrees, top, bottom, left, right, north, south, east, west, everywhere around us. We can't believe anything. People have been misinformed. There's disinformation. People don't know if they're going to have a job tomorrow. They don't know if they can pay for their mortgage. People are just confused to the nth degree by design. And it's wrong. And we can't allow this. We absolutely can't allow this. Because even television, gosh, when you and I were growing up, there were the good guys and there were the bad guys, and the good guys won. And, you know, you saw the moral of the story in the story. Now, that's not the case. Now we see people manipulating the system and getting off. And so why should anybody play by the rules? Because it seems that the rules are there only to punish us, and not the bigger players. And you've been talking about Hunter Biden. I'm sure you saw the story on Zero Hedge entitled "Sperry Exposes the Complete History of Hunter Biden's Crony-Connected Jobs." I'm sure you saw that. Are you going to be talking about that?
I'll let you talk about that, but I did see that article. But there's so much to talk about, Vince. You know, it's pretty obvious that the powers that be are saying that adult mutual consensual sex is now off the table. And when I said this is all, you know, anti-Islamistphobe, this is code for covering up crimes, for dividing us, for not allowing transparency of the aristocracy to basically get away with anything that they want. Now, you got to remember, too, you got to go back in time. Barack Obama in 2012 passed a bill to allow propaganda against the American people. And both sides in Congress passed it. We have to remember this. You know, President Trump, you know, obviously I support him, but some things he says I don't agree with. You know, at a rally yesterday, and if the White House is listening, which I believe that they are, President Trump, you know, with this Barr, AG Barr is doing nothing. Very little. 1% of what he should be doing. And President Trump called him a nice guy at one of his rallies. President Trump, we don't even have antitrust legislation against these big tech authorities. There's no antitrust authorities out there. The big corporations has total unchecked power for all and any corruption. Do you think this report that DOJ is coming out against Google is going to do anything? No, this is a smokescreen. We have monopolies that are nefarious, illegal investments making their executives wealthy with absolute no productivity, no R&D, no innovation, no new hiring, no nothing. We have runaway, the whole economy. We have deflation, stagflation, and inflation, and the worst of it going to the bottom 93%. We have hardly any velocity of money. We have money printing, which leads to less purchasing power of the dollar. We have inflation of necessities for the little guy. I mean, we're in a very dangerous situation where we have bankruptcies, insolvency, liquidity issues. I mean, President Trump, you said Barr was a nice guy. The American people don't give a damn about someone who can be pushed around, bribed, or blackmailed. They want the rule of law. They want arrests. They want indictments. You know, for those of you at the FBI, the DOJ, the CIA, what's your morale like in the office? Where are the whistleblowers? Does everybody have a yellow spine? Or do they care about the manufacture of the perception of their own self-importance and self-preservation and personal survival? What about your country? The 1 million-plus combat soldiers that gave their life for you. What about your country?
Class, if you want to see what Rich is talking about, just start watching Combat! Exclamation point, a television series from the 1960s. You'll see what he's talking about. Rich Evans with us. This is hour number 2, and he's been delineating the extent of corruption at the highest levels of the United States government. And during the top of the hour news, you might have heard the president talk about the latest debate with the mute button. Well, I understand what he's talking about because in a very insignificant scenario that I was involved with, running for the board of directors of a electric cooperative, they did everything they could to silence me. And their latest stunt was to have the police at the ready to arrest me if they thought I got out of hand with trying to explain how the board of directors and the corruption works. So It's everywhere. It's even at, a little tiny electric cooperative, which doesn't amount to a hill of beans, in the grand scheme of things. Thanks. Rich?
Well, yeah, and this is what they do when they want to silence you. My caller ID, like when somebody calls me about buying a piece of land that I have on the market, my caller ID comes out to them in a different number.
Okay, so Rich, when you call me
mm-hmm.
from your landline,
mm-hmm.
I've got caller ID,
mm-hmm.
and I've got a little button on our phone. It's an old phone. This thing is probably 30 years old. It's a landline desk set, multiple lines, and I've only got one line connected to it. But I can hit redial. I can hit some favorites, which I don't have any programmed in on purpose. And I can hit, caller ID, and then I can hit this little button that says dial. So I can redial or dial the number that came in for your call to me. And I don't get you.
Yep.
I get something else.
Yep.
And it's not, I get a message that says, the voicemail for this number has not been set up. Now,
yep.
Your home phone has an answering machine.
Correct.
It doesn't have voicemail, smartphone voicemail. Yeah.
Correct.
So the message is incorrect. Now it would probably apply to 99.99999% of everybody. So it would work except for the fact that I'm calling you on a landline with an answering machine, a physical answering machine, rather than a smartphone that has, Verizon or some other company, taking the voicemail at their site that you can listen to. So that's what's happening with you. So you're absolutely right.
No, Vince, I've been totally demonetized, especially since sticking up for President Trump and the Republicans. Totally. Anytime somebody wants to buy a piece of land, I can't get back in touch with them. They're getting messages like you just mentioned that they can't leave a message or the number's inaccurate. All my caller ID. This is my landline, folks. This is even my cell. My caller ID is almost always different, especially regarding commerce. Okay? My local bank, Glacier Bank, they say it was a mistake. But for all of you in western Montana, be aware. Glacier Bank, I cashed a check. It was a small check. Vince, it may have been your check that you sent me. It was like, $40, $50 or whatever it was for whatever it was in the last couple of months.
Oh, it was for all the nice comments. It was for all the nice comments that you say about us.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I can't remember what it was. But anyway.
I paid you for something.
Let me finish. The bank didn't, I asked them to put it in my checking account. Glacier Bank here in western Montana did not do it. And they made this excuse, well, there may be a couple more rich Schebens out there, and they were humming and hawing. And maybe it was a legitimate mistake, but it's also a coincidence. And in the Montana Department of Revenue, I've mentioned this a couple times on the air. They said I had a finished basement. I had 2 finished bathrooms. They said I had modern heat. They said all this stuff from my taxes being high. And they were all wrong, all lies. See, there's no accountability at the big corporate level or the government level. None. It's all corrupt. I cannot sell a piece of land. Folks, I know there's many, many people listening to this show. If I gave you my home phone number and you called to buy a piece of land, it would be irrelevant because you would not get to me. If you even tried to leave a message, you'd have a 99% chance of not doing it because they're going to see that it's commerce and you're going to appear like you left a message, but you're not going to be able to do it. And then if the 1% chance you left the message and I call you back, I'm going to get the same thing calling you back. There's going to be different caller IDs. This is what we deal with. We have been totally 100% demonetized because of sticking up for the rule of law, for the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody, for truth, for what President Trump stands for. This is what I've been dealing with for years. And this is one of the reasons I have to be self-sufficient. I have to hunt. I have to fish. I have to garden. I have to live off-grid. I have to raise animals. I have to do this. I have no choice. I contacted, when I ended my career in big pharma, and I stood for principle, for the rule of law, when they told me that they would not hire me as a female to be a job share with GlaxoSmithKline. Thank God Merck hired me as the first male job share, and I got 3 years with them. But they were trying to push me out at the very end, too, because of me being politically incorrect. So this is what we have to deal with. When you stand for the rule of law, when you stand for principle, they say I contacted 30 attorneys. One attorney filed a lawsuit against GlaxoSmithKline. He either got bribed, threatened, intimidated, or blackmailed, and he dropped the lawsuit. And coincidentally, this attorney ran for the Montana Supreme Court. So maybe he got funded by GlaxoSmithKline. I don't know. Would you be surprised? No, I wouldn't. So this is what's happening in America. Everybody's either blackmailed or bought and paid for, especially at the highest levels. 30 attorneys I consulted with. They told me that as a poor/middle-class white male heterosexual with a Christian name, I have no group self-pity points. I have no rights, I have no restitution, and I have no protection under the rule of law. What choice do I have but to grow a garden, but to hunt and fish, but to live off-grid, when 30 attorneys told me that I was unhireable and I did not have any ability for restitution or protection or rights under the rule of law? Several attorneys told me if the same thing happened to me and I was female, I would have had a $10 million settlement by the end of the day, and I would have been on national news. So this is what we're fighting for. We are fighting for not just our right to work, we're fighting for our right to survive. Vince?
It's just like in Jericho, where Gerald McCreaney said that we're fighting for our lives. And we are. We are. I've never seen corruption so high. And it was unthinkable that we'd have corruption like this in the United States. It's unthinkable. Yeah, third world countries, sure. It was like routine. Please continue. I'm enjoying everything that you're saying. And you're absolutely right. I totally agree with everything you've said.
Oh, Vince, you know what? I appreciate again. You're so generous with allowing me. I think you give me probably 90% of the talking time when I'm on the air with you, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. But regarding some of these things that I said regarding the Hunter Biden's proven pedophilia and torture of young girls, it's amazing to me how the certain feminists think that the Democrat Party is on their side. I got to remind you of history, folks. Bill Clinton's rape victims, remember Joy Behar called them all tramps? Hillary Clinton's running around the country talking about white privilege. And yet Chelsea Clinton gets a job right out of college for almost $1 million a year. Then her mother keeps flying around the world talking about white privilege, carbon footprints. For us, the little people. And they're selling a sanctioned narrative. What about Bill Clinton paying off Paula Jones $850,000 to shut up? What about all the female genital mutilation in this country and around the world? What about Brett Kavanaugh with no proof, no evidence? All the women but one admitted they were lying. And now forever he will be called a gang rapist. And people are being called useful idiots, despite countless females coming forward with phony rape hoaxes. It's group identity politics. It's designed to divide us as a people. You know, people have to be aware of what's happening. You know, do you remember that, I can't think of his name right now, but there was a Democrat congressman that was talking about, Conway, Kellyanne Conway, and he said publicly that she looks better on her knees than she does standing up. I think the implication is pretty obvious there. They don't care what group you're from. They want you to drink the Kool-Aid of political correctness, and this is why we need courage. We cannot dub ourselves the land of the free and the home of the brave if we allow this to happen. You know, since the 90s, Congress has had a bimbo slush fund, which coughs up tens of millions of dollars, taxpayer dollars, to pay off women who think that they got dissed or maybe they got raped or maybe whatever by our own Congress. But the feminists don't mention this. There's pedophilia grooming gangs everywhere for children. They don't mention this. Look, if we don't have practice what you preach laws, if we don't call out truth, like this Kavanaugh hearing, it was all done not so every female can be believed. It was done to create a precedent to eliminate due process. And if you read about it, you'll see that. And we'll be back after the break, folks. Appreciate you being here.
Neither Rich Scheben nor I mentioned that we wouldn't be taking calls today, but we do have a call, so this will be the first and only call of today's broadcast. I don't want you to feel that we're playing favorites class. It's just that Rich normally does not take calls, but we didn't say it. So George is USA Prepares Instructor. He's certainly welcome. George, thank you for calling.
Hi, Vincent. Hi, Rick. I apologize, gentlemen. I tuned in a little after you made the statement that there were no calls, so that's why I thought.
No, George, I did not make that statement today. Normally I do, because Rich prefers not to take calls, but today we didn't do it. So blame it on me. But I'm so glad you called. It's great to hear your voice.
Thank you.
How would you like to weigh in?
Right. I'd like to weigh in and say that even with our imperfections, we still believed and we were raised, and it was kind of like imbued in us about justice, about honor, about, speaking the truth. And as the old Western saw says, talk truth, say the truth, shoot straight, and more or less keep your word. But I think they've been driving us for a long, long time into places where we might have, by the grace of God, a better chance of surviving in this newfound system that will right now they probably hold us in contempt, and they'll pull certain unfair, sneaky, devious means of ways of basically just undermining us and what we stand for. We represent something to them, and they can tell when they meet us. I came out of Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, I didn't realize to the degree that it was inundated with a certain type of individual that if they could get you in their sights, you represented to them in their mindset everything that they stood against. And eventually I moved out, and I moved up north a ways into the mountains. And I know, Rich, the same thing with you. When I hear you speak about how, you would put in for various types of civil service government jobs, and you wouldn't get a fair shake, you wouldn't get a call back, and you really would be, your application would be basically on the dead letter pile. And I know, too, Vincent, with your career, you have a career that you don't have to take your hat off to anyone, because you you were following a path to where you ended up now, and same thing with you, Rick, and me, that in other words, we weren't compatible, and it's almost like being hunted in a sense that wild animals will naturally just gravitate to the more remote areas. Not that I'm comparing us to wild animals, but there's a freedom, and we're not compatible with the system that they're bringing in. And I think that it's like a lumberjack just about ready when the tree's about to fall. They yell timber, and I think that timber is going to be within the next maybe month, maybe couple of months, maybe year. And I think they've been working a very long time, these termites posing as human beings, and they're just gnawing at the structure of a healthy tree.
Yeah, George, the reason why I got to say I haven't been taking calls in the last probably 6-7 months, and the reason is because I feel that America is hanging by a thread. Our freedoms, our liberty, our Constitution, Bill of Rights, rule of law. And I felt obligated. I feel, as a patriot, as an American, I feel it's my duty to give as much information as possible and wake as many people up as possible. And I just think that when I'm on the air, I want to do as little small talk as possible. Now, of course, when I am being the interviewer, it's a different story because I want to give the microphone to somebody whose turn it is to be on the air. But I just feel up until this election, because as I've given so many hundreds of articles to show that this mail-in ballot is absolutely 100% fraudulent, that the legitimacy of this election, because of mail-in ballots, will be irrelevant, not to mention all the fraud, the election rigging coming from Facebook, Google, Twitter, with the help of the DOJ, the FBI, and the CIA. There's nothing legitimate about America at this point in time. But thank you for calling, George.
And the termite analogy is brilliant. We'll be right back. So as you've been hearing on this broadcast, there's a great concern about this election. And no matter who wins, we believe that violence will escalate. And you just heard at the bottom of the hour news that the Democrat Party feels that the polls, the numbers have been skewed in favor of the Democrats. And they're saying maybe it's not so good as the polls are saying. Maybe the number of people who would prefer Jumpin' Joe, the plagiarist, to be selected as president, maybe there are not as many of them as the polls have been indicating. And it's what we've been saying for years and years. You can't believe anything. Can't believe anything.
Well, unfortunately, we're coming up for judgment to varying degrees, and it's going to find us where it finds us. Whether people have made some preparations that'll soften the blow, but in other words, we cannot have a country that the founders envisioned with, it takes a free and moral people that live by codes and are cognizant of a higher power, God, that looks over us. And I think Bismarck said it best. He said, God looks out for fools, babes, and the United States. And it has been true, but how much can a country slide down the garbage chute and then expect to be blessed on the way down? And we've seen it happen with Rome. We've seen it happen with various empires throughout the history. And I'll just say, the last thing I'll say is that I had a lawyer say to me one time in a union case, we had been going back and forth a while over a period of months, and finally he said to me one day, he goes, what do you want, justice? And I looked at him and I realized he was coming from a different place where they have ethics but not morals. And the very last thing I'll just say, and I appreciate you and Rich, giving your time and putting putting things aside to share with us, I'll just say, in Gulliver's Travel, there's a quote. A king's talking to Gulliver, and he says, I love law, but I hate justice. And he wasn't contradicting himself, was he, gentlemen? And on that note, I will say, take care. God bless.
Very, very well said, George. Very well said. Absolutely brilliant.
Vince, I just want to comment on a couple things George said. And, when I talk about standing for principle, I have those three base things that I say. I try and say as often as I can when I have appropriate time to do it. And that is the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody in American soil. Now, I hear these words all the time, and I've said this. I hear ethics, morals, values, rule of law, accountability. Now, the people are waking up to all this, and that's why the polls are what it is, because they're basically trying to give excuses for people waking up to the corruption, especially behind the scenes. And if we continue to have different rules, which would be ethics, morals, values, laws, and accountability, which I've given thousands of examples over the year, based on what group you're in, based on the entitlement to play the victim group status card, based on demanding to lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job based on what group you're in, eliminating hard work, proven results, and qualifications. And then the same people are demanding no protection, no rights, and no restitution under the rule of law for the people who are actually being affected and attacked. But yet they see us enabling big government, big corporations, literally protecting them with liability immunity. And as you know, Vince, I have proven on this show thousands of times over the last 9 years that the wealth inequality is going from the bottom 93% to the top 1 to 2%. Now they're dropping, we get the breadcrumbs, the top 5 or 6% get the loaves of bread, and the top 1 to 2% get the bakeries and the bread trucks. And this is why we have to wake up and stop protecting your group, hyphen, and pronoun and start being American, because we are giving these people at the very top free lunch. Let me give you an example here. I'm on, for those of you who are on your computer, I've mentioned this website before, citizenfreepress.com, citizenfreepress.com, CITIZEN, freepress.com. And I actually listened to this. Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, their announcers for NFL football, they were mocking the military flyover. And then I believe it was Troy Aikman that says, that ain't happening with the Kamala Biden ticket, partner. See, if you're a I say gazillionaire to cover the multimillionaire, the multi-billionaire, and even now we have trillionaires like Bezos. When you have this kind of money, it's easy to lick the boots of the elite because they have theirs. I want you to remember that, folks. They have theirs. How many times have I said it's not a left-right paradigm? It's very little of that. It's much more the aristocracy controlling and managing the serfs. They got theirs. The people who got theirs, 99% of them, are in the club. And they have to keep us down with different rules, laws, and accountability that they don't have to adhere to. They don't practice what they preach. See, Troy Aikman can say, oh, that ain't happening with the Kamala Biden ticket, partner. Mocking the military flyover for the little people. Little people don't matter. Come on. They got theirs. So they're in the club. They don't want you to have yours. They don't want you to, never mind prosper, they don't want you to survive. I want you to think about that after this show is over in a couple minutes here. Vince, I'd like your comment on what I just said.
Well, I was thinking about the kings. You know, what would the kings do in a situation like this? Well, people would be put in dungeons. People would be removed. They would be, I guess the current term is disappeared. And I keep thinking, you know, as we go down this spiral, what would the kings do? You know, bring us back to the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. What would they do if they found some people speaking out against their desires? And what would a king do? If he wanted a woman, he would just take that woman, right? Isn't that how it went? Am I confused? I don't think so.
That's what they're doing now. Except they're not just taking women, they're taking little girls, and they're torturing them on film.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that not much has changed. It's still the same thing. Those who are in charge, those who rule, do what they want. And the question is, does Buckingham Palace have a dungeon? Does Windsor Castle have a dungeon? Be nice to know, wouldn't it?
It would. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't doubt it if they... In fact, I would be surprised if they don't.
Right. Right. So, there are those who tell us what to do, and then there's us. And there are those who tell us what to do, and they have the police to make sure that we understand the message. And if it gets, you know, more out of control, they've got the military. They've got bombs. And they've got diseases. And I still don't understand why we have not retaliated against China for, as President Donald J. Trump said, the China virus. How come? How come we haven't stopped every single shipment? I'll tell you a quick story, since you mentioned cars. And this is germane, believe it or not. So we were working on a Mercedes that was 16 years old. And it has a front suspension. And installed were some brand name parts called Mevotech, Mevotech. It might look like it's pronounced Mevotech. It's a Canadian company. Now, the original suspension parts lasted about 16 years. The replacement parts from Mevotech lasted 2 months. And what happened was the failure was so severe in these parts. They have a ball and socket and a bushing. So it's a sway bar link. And the ball and socket either has a metallurgy problem, a design problem, a manufacturing problem, or all of the above. It did not have an installation problem. And what happened was the ball and socket and the sway bar loosened very, very quickly and had more and more play in it and more vibration. And the vibration caused the bolt that secured the sway bar link in place vibrated out. And then the car became dangerous to drive. What I'm saying is, I talked to Mevotech. I called them up in Canada and I said, here's the problem. Here's the symptom. Here's what happened. Here's what I believe you need to know about. And I have the parts and I'll be glad to send them to you. You have a problem. It's serious. And it can cause people to have crashes. Now, I called them before the broadcast a couple times and left messages. They left a message with me. We're playing phone tag. They might have even called the farmhouse during the time I've been on the air. What I'm saying is there are lots of parts out there that are made in China, and I believe these are made in China. They're just sold by a Canadian company. Why are we allowing substandard parts in this country? Why? And we're going to find out soon that these part failures, these substandard disc brake rotors, substandard disc brake calipers, substandard disc brake lines, substandard alternators, serpentine belts, water pumps, axles, bearings, etc., idler pulleys. All these things that if any one of them fails, you're not going. Your car is done. Your truck is done until it's repaired. We're going to find out that those parts last maybe 1/5 as long as the original equipment parts. And when are we going to wake up and say, enough is enough? Okay? So, all right, so it's half the price when we go to buy it, but it lasts 1/5 as long. And it leaves us stranded on the side of the road. When are we going to say enough is enough? Who are you going to call? That's the problem. Who are you going to call? Plus, you might have heard me talking about a water softener I bought at Menards and how it was kind of roughed up. And I don't know if Menards did it or the trucking company that handled it before Menards got the special order for us. But it was beat up. And I talked to the store manager, and I mentioned the story on the air last week. I want to read just part of an email I got from the store manager. Vincent, thank you for this is the store manager from Menards emailing me. Vincent, thank you for the kind words. We do use these situations as training tools, and I will be playing this clip at our next management meeting. Thank you again, and he signed it. Now, the reason I'm saying that is you need to speak up. And so I bought something, paid full price for it, and it came damaged. So I didn't buy a damaged one. I bought a good one, in perfect condition. At least I thought I did because I bought it on the internet. What I'm saying is you need to speak up. And I told the story for a full segment about what happened to this water softener and how it was damaged and how it was upsetting to me. And they gave me $75 credit, which was fair. And I accepted that. And the management of Menards is using USA Prepares broadcast, the segment where I talked about this, as a training tool for their employees. And why are they doing that? Because I delineated exactly what the problem was and how it could have been avoided and how it could have been seen and how it wasn't handled properly until the manager got involved. So it cost them $75. And every time this happens, it costs money for somebody. And Menards wants to make sure that they minimize this. And that's why they played the clip. And I said on the air, before I heard from the store manager, that I was sure that they would be playing this for their employees. I was sure of it. And I got confirmation. Now, I didn't have confirmation that they would. I just knew that the store management would take this so seriously that they would play that 20-minute clip or so for their employees. So, Rich, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have the selection. The violence will escalate. Do you have any thoughts about what people should do in preparation for this other than get what they need right now?
Well, we've been talking about it for years, Vince. I just don't know what else we can add to the redundancy as far as, we don't live in a society where hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications and merit and job performance mean anything anymore. We live in a society where the DOJ, FBI, CIA have sold out the little people with treason, sedition, espionage. We live in a country where big tech, the Googles, Twitters, and Facebook are rigging the elections and covering pay to play, covering up child porn, even blocking, shadow banning, and censoring the President of the United States while allowing Chinese government sites and propaganda to occur, where town hall meetings don't even bring up all this corruption in the Biden family regarding these geopolitical meetings. We have coups against a sitting president out in the open. We have airways being blocked. We have nefarious emails being blocked from Hillary. We have Russia stories made up while we, the taxpayers, are paying hundreds of $millions for the theater paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. this is why I talk about those three principles as often as I can. I think I only discussed one, but because of time, same rules, laws, and accountability. The second is truth. And the third is because we don't have rights, restitution, or protection under the rule of law. It's all based on what group you're in. And that third one is, if there's different consequences for a certain behavior based upon what group you're in, then you get to do it too. See, this is because we have no rule of law. Everybody in the hierarchy of government and corporations is either bought and paid for, aka bribed, or blackmailed. Now, I had lots of big production companies, because I had a small production company do a video on my lifestyle, off-grid and all this, a few years ago. I had some major, big names. I'm not going to name drop. It doesn't do anybody any good. Want to do documentaries and reality shows on my lifestyle. And I go, do I have final editing rights? They said no. Basically, I didn't pursue anything because they were trying to bribe me with fame or infamy or money to give up, to make me repeat the narrative that they want me to repeat. I refused, and I am demonetized totally. This is America. November 3rd is going to make or break our country. If you don't want to vote Republican, then don't think of the millions of combat soldiers that died in mud and blood to give us the freedoms and liberties that we have now. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
And class, if you want to see what he's talking about, just watch the Combat series, COMBAT, exclamation point. It's available on eBay. You can buy it new, you can buy it used, and it's available on YouTube. Thanks, Rich.